Hi, I'm James Heinz with Amsel Medical. I took over the CEO role in August of 2024. I originally started with the company as a board advisor and basically became the senior vice president, and now I'm the CEO of the company. That's for the lawyers in the room. Here's our team. We have about 200 years of combined experience. And at the bottom part is our medical advisor group, and they're kind of the who's who in vascular surgery and trauma, including Todd Rasmussen from Mayo, Tom Probstol's over in Europe, Colonel Dorsch is from the United States, trauma surgeon. Elazar Edelman is pretty well known in the vascular space, as is Lo Kabnick. This is my fourth startup, I guess, if you call it that. I worked with Vinclose. We exited that to BD and about 3 years ago for $330 million. Center for Venous Disease was my vascular surgery clinic operation in the Southwest. We had 12 locations. I exited that about a year and a half ago. Venus Medical exited $440 million to Covidien Medtronic years ago. Our founder is an Israeli vascular surgeon. His son's a VP of strategic development for us, and basically MIT grad. And Jeff Willis came over from Angiodynamics with a few of his friends. So we're basically in a situation where we have very high IP and FDA portfolios. The leadership team is among many veterans in the industry. Our revenue growth is supposed to be about $100 million in the next 4 years. We're seeking $3.5 to $5 million. The comps basically validate this 10x payback. We're in 3 verticals right now. The third one's not our focus yet, but they're all billion-dollar focuses on chronic venous disease and the trauma area. In the trauma area, we have a very unique product that's been backed and partnered with the United States government for $7.5 million back in October. I signed that contract for sole source. Think of it as 2 different products. This product's a temporary clamping technology that basically resides inside of that handle with either line of sight or ultrasound guidance. It's called the Secure TO. The military has their own names for everything, so this to them is the TVOC project. Where you can't put a tourniquet, this device will be used to basically use the 18-gauge needle to go through the vessel, put a clamp on both sides of the vessel, bring it together, withdraw the needle, and then basically leave behind a small buttress where you would tape to the patient, transport it. One of the big things about trauma in the United States and around the world is about 60% of the fatalities occur in transport. It's not from the injuries. You have 5 liters of blood. If you lose more than 2, you're probably going to die. A save in this industry right now is an amputation. Amputation costs the United States government about $50,000 to $80,000. That's for the prosthetic, and it's $50,000 to $60,000 for the rehab at minimum. So we all have, battle trauma, natural disasters, ER trauma, terrorist attacks. Those are all concerns. But think about anywhere in the body where you can't put a tourniquet, or you could put a tourniquet and don't want to. Tourniquets are really bad for your limbs, and they usually end up in an amputation. So we have a device that'll stop this from happening. Hopefully, it will reduce the amount of amputations and save people's lives. That our tagline, saving limbs, saving lives. The current solutions really fall short. You got Quick Clock, Reboa. Reboa was invented by Todd Rasmussen from Mayo, and he's on our advisory team. And then you have these chest compression deployment things on the chest, but you can't use those in the groin, you can't use them in the carotid, you can't use them around the body where you can't wrap it around. So they're not very effective. This is the device off to the left. You deploy the device so the needle comes out the end, it goes through the vessel, you put a clamp on one side of the vessel, on the other side of the vessel, you bring them together, you withdraw the needle, and basically leave behind a tether that you can now tape to the patient. Here's our other product that we have going for us. This is a venous device. It's a permanent clamp for chronic venous disease. And basically, we're going to be targeting the perforator disease market, which leads to these venous ulcers that I'll show you here in a second. The disease is very progressive, so we grade them in CEAP 1 through 6. And our space will be over here in the C5, C6 area where the big guys aren't. CMS, I was on a panel about 3-4 years ago because part of the vascular centers that I own, we did a lot of vein work. We did about 10,000 cases a year, so we were very high volume. We use the Medtronic catheter. I was a consultant to the C-suite for VinClose when we did that deal with BD. And basically, we don't want to take on the big boys in this area that's kind of crowded right now, but those technologies fail 39% of the time over here related to the venous ulcers. So we're going to focus over here. 10% market share for us is worth $52 million. Here's the commercial product, very small, sleek looking. Here's some of the comps I talked about. Venus, I was at Venus when we sold that, $440 million. If you look at VinClose, it's $330 million. QuickClot, believe it or not, was sold for $500 million. So the comps represent a 10 to 12x multiple. Here's our funding and development timeline, kind of a busy slide, but the one up above is our Venus product, and that's what we're raising money to finish that out. The below is the trauma product, and as I mentioned before, in October, I signed a sole source military contract to develop this. They are working with this. The contract is for $7.45 million, and then there's an add-on for $2.5 million for commercialization. If you look at that, we have the U.S. launch of the top product in Q4 of 26 and Q3 in 27 for the trauma product. Here's our funding history. We've raised about $12 million. $2.5 million of that's been non-dilutive. And in the red box, you see the new $7.45 million. And here's how we plan on using that money. Most companies that are at this conference talk a lot about de-risk. I mean, we have a team that's over 200 years of experience, 3 focused verticals. The third one that I forgot to mention, I'll go back for a second. The clamp itself has 3 510Ks, and it can be used in robotics and IA-assisted surgery. And we're talking to a couple different people now. We won't be designing a delivery system for that, but we'll be licensing the product to others. The targeted large bench head markets, you got strong IP. We have 3 510Ks on the clamp itself. We're redoing the CE mark, just like everybody else that has to redo that in the MDR process. The clinical validation's ongoing. We've done animal cadaver studies. We were with a group of Air Force doctors last week at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida, and we had 10 surgeons in the room, and they were Googling and basically very, very pleased with the deployment of that trauma product. We didn't have one failure, and the only thing that they commented that was negative was the size of the device. Keep in mind, we need to retract that needle so it doesn't stick anybody when it's in the rucksacks. So the plan is to put 2 of these in every backpack for our U.S. military and NATO. I've also had meetings with Ukraine and Israel. As soon as we get our 510K on this product, which will be about 8 months, they want to make a purchase. So they may buy it before anybody in the United States gets it. Revenues in late 26, strong comps and non-dilutive supported funding. And so we believe that we have de-risked this as much as possible. The focus right now is on a reimbursement pathway for the Venus product, and we've got that underway. Thank you.